Good evening. I'm Kwame Brown, and welcome to the 2020 Real Talk Show. This has been a crazy month. President Trump has been impeached in the House of Representatives. He was impeached strictly across party lines. Then we start to listen to what's going on in Iowa. The Iowa caucus has been a total disaster. My elementary school elections with fifth graders running the show were better prepared than this circus that we're witnessing in Iowa. Then here it comes. President Trump walking in the U.S. House of Representatives to give his State of the Union speech. Now, he knew the Senate would not impeach him, but he could not help it. He could not wait until the speech to show off. He went straight at it by snubbing the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, by not shaking her hand. Now, as people say, he didn't see her reach out shaking her hand. Then he starts to lay out all of these wonderful, exciting things that his administration has done to make America great again. I heard great things like the economy is the best it's ever been.
Thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been.
Jobs were at an all-time high. He was sending down in this year's budget to permanently fund historically black colleges and universities. How could you be mad at that? And to fund vocational education in every high school in America. He said that unemployment was amongst the lowest minorities have ever seen it in the history of the United States. At this point, I stopped eating my chicken wings to focus on this newfound discovery. But hold up, it gets better. Then I received a text from my Republican friend, and he says, hey, this is a new president that is moving in a more diverse than ever before place, and then he puts on a strong arm emoji. I looked back at the president's speech, and then I heard the president awarding an opportunity scholarship to Janiah Davis, a young African-American girl who was stuck in a failing school. I was like, whoa, she deserves that. Then he turned around and honored Tuskegee Airmen who turned 100 years old by penning them as a general. The president then goes on to mention an African-American male who just got out of prison and how he has, because of his justice reform, this man is working and he's a productive member of society. And I'm not making this up. He says that because of his administration, he's created opportunity zones, which is going to bring $100 million funding to inner cities. Then he has Senator Tim Scott stand up for an applause. Again, another text from my Republican friend saying, do you believe me now? Then it comes. Yes, he awards the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh. Now I have 52 texts saying this president is a racist and everything he said was just a setup to get the minority votes. Then I looked at my tweets, and who else but CNN, who was fact checking and said 50% of what the president said was a straight out lie.
We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. To report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Now completed over 100 miles and have over 500 miles fully completed in a very short period of time. Real median household income is now at the highest level ever recorded. Thank you very much.
Here with us today is former president of the D.C. Young Democrats, Kevin Chavous, and he's joined by the president of the D.C. Young Republicans, Steve Centers. Look, this is going to be a good show. We'll discuss all this and more, so let's get started. Welcome to Always Real Talk. Robert, it's great to have you in the studio. And Kevin, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Look, it's an exciting time, right? And I don't care what side you're on, it's exciting. We have another opportunity in the next couple of months to elect a president of the United States. And we all have a choice, right? We get to go in and we get to push a button, right? When we push a left button, the right button doesn't make a difference. We have an opportunity to do that. And I kind of want to start off just talking about, the State of the Union. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people is watching the State of the Union, Rob.
A lot of people.
You think?
That's what they say. They say a lot of people are watching it.
I don't know how many people.
A lot of people are talking about it. That's for sure.
Well, I know a lot of people are talking about the impeachment trial. I don't know how many people was watching it, but when it comes to the State of the Union, everyone was watching it. I mean, Robert, I want to start off and talk about why is this election so important?
This election is important because the address highlighted it. President Trump is forecasting and showing that unity, that while the Democratic Party is in disarray, it's an important time for Republicans to capitalize upon that. I mean, we have House elections coming up. We have important elections in the Senate. And so I think injecting a little bit of that stability rather than some of the instability coming from the House of Representatives is important for Republicans. And so we're taking this seriously. We're out there, we're campaigning, and we're going to win in November.
Kevin, I mean, same question. Why is this election so important?
Well, it's critical. If Democrats want to sort of reverse some of the damage that's been done by the Trump administration, we've got to win the White House. And we definitely have to hold on to our majority in the House. That's important as well. And I think when you look at just some of the division that's been created by the Trump administration, I think it's been damaging for the country. We really haven't had a president who's been as open about misleading people, about mixing bold-faced lies with half-truths, with some truth. And I think it is very dangerous to have a personality type in the White House that tends to be more of a divider than a unifier. I think that in the State of the Union, he did say some lines that would lead you to believe he was trying to unify people, but generally his policies and the things he do are very contradictory. Like he did a lot of outreach to African Americans. You talked about Tuskegee Airmen, he talked about sort of low unemployment rate, but then he gives a Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh, who's one of the most outspoken racists and bigots around. So those types of things are contradictory. You don't really know where he stands on things.
Well, let me ask you a question, Robert. The president, there's a lot of conversation on both sides of the president, being someone that can bring the country together, right? And, some looked at that speech, as you see in his eyes, he said he thought that was contradictory. And I've talked to some Republicans who thought that he was trying to bring it together by actually recognizing those minority individuals that have made significant contributions to America, and then at the same time recognizing others that have made the same thing. And why is the president having such a hard time kind of figuring out how to bring the country together?
I think that's because those on the left don't want a united country. They've been against President Trump from day one. Washington Post had a headline, 12 minutes after the president was inaugurated, of now the impeachment process has begun. This has been the goal of the Democrats since day one, to find something to impeach the president on. Last night, President Trump knew that his speech had to be a home run to bring together a voice of unity. And if you look at the polls, 70-something% of independents approved of the speech. Almost a majority of Democrats approved of the speech. A majority of Republicans did. I think what he did is he contrasted and showed that stability that the country, the track that the country's headed on. We have low unemployment rates for African Americans, for women, increased protections for LGBT citizens. People like that are paying attention and seeing that this president, maybe not in rhetoric always, because he speaks in such a hyperbole that people stay so laser focused on that if he says the answer is 4, then they're like, no, it's 5. But he said, well, 4 presidents before me. That's just him speaking him. But if you look at the agenda that he's putting forth, it is a message of stability, and people are paying attention to that as compared to the instability that's happening within the Democratic caucus, the primary. Everyone in the Democratic Party just seems to be running against Trump. They're running away from something rather than for a message of bringing people together.
Well, that's a good point, Kevin. I mean, clearly you see two sides, right? And even though the economy is doing well, unemployment is down, especially in the minority communities, especially amongst women. But people still just don't like President Trump. So even if the numbers are good, even if all this great stuff is going on, they don't attribute it to him, right? If you either hate the presidency, you attribute it to, say, this was Obama, it wasn't President Trump. Why is it that people hate this president? Well, how do some hate this president so much?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with.
And I want to go to our young folks because
Right.
we hear the former president of the D.C. Young Democrats,
Right.
and there's the current president of the Young D.C. Republican Party. This is what I want to understand, because I understand the older generation, and it just it's very clear, right?
Yeah.
But some people still don't know about the younger generation. Why don't
Well,
you
I
give me
think
your perspective?
from the young Democratic perspective, I think that, a lot of younger people, especially nowadays, millennials or Generation Z, they actually have warmed up to more, democratic socialist policies. If you look at polling, socialism is more popular now among the younger generation. So I think, and when they say socialism, I don't think they
That's what
really
you said.
know what it means.
I don't know, but
they're thinking about Medicare for all and things, more progressive policies that would provide sort of a safety net for people. And I think when they see Trump, like he joined a lawsuit that would prevent the Affordable Care Act from providing benefits to those with pre-existing conditions. Things like that, I think, hurt his standing with young people who want to go the other way. They want.
I want to stop on that. Because Kevin, this is factual. This is what took place, and then yet the president at the State of the Union said he was for pre-existing conditions, and he made it very clear to say that in his speech. Has he changed his tone? Because that's one of the things that comes up quite often. Is he says he's for the health care and pre-existing conditions, but at the same time you've heard what Kevin said. Where is the party on this?
On pre-existing
where are young
conditions?
folks? Where are young Democrats? Where are young Republicans on
I
this?
think one of the great things about Obamacare was that it secured pre-existing conditions. I don't think that you should be subjected to, you lose insurance, you lose your job for 3 months, and boom, next thing you know, you can't get your treatment for some condition you've had for 10 years. I don't see the administration pivoting on that. I just see that in the healthcare
let me say this. We did say, the Department of Justice has,
filed a suit.
On that. So,
and I can give you an answer, but it's from a 30,000-foot view. So the government's so large, not everything's always coordinated, and I'm sure that once the proper attention is made to that, then that will be the case. It goes back to people say Trump is putting people in cages. No, what that came out was from the enforcement of an Obama-era rule that this is how we're going to treat the detention of illegal aliens that come into this country. It wasn't that somebody said this is what we're going to do. It's that because the policy was finally enacted that came out. So I think there's just some incongruency with the goals and how the policy is being carried out. And truly, I think this administration supports pre-existing conditions being a protected class.
Well, I will say
that's going to remain the same.
Well, I will say this. Anyone who knows and is following President Trump, I don't think there's anyone in his administration who's going to do something differently than what he wants, right? Because if you do, you're probably not going to have a job. So I don't know how the Justice Department is moving forward to stop something that he actually supports. But that's then he doesn't know what's going on in his government. It seems like there's a really disconnect, because he'll stop something that he doesn't like quickly.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
Yeah,
but now let's talk about the Democratic Party. Why is it such in shambles?
Yeah.
It's almost it is. We've had, we have our show all the time, and we had A. Scott Bolden on. We talked about this early on, and I said, Democratic Party's trying to jump off the cliff. They're so far left, they're going to fall off the cliff. And then everyone beat me up and said, no, they're not. We need that. Yeah, they're off the cliff, right? And then everyone's trying to figure out how to get back off the cliff. And then the person that was jumping off, Bernie, they just, my goodness. It was like, we love Bernie. Now, everyone hates Bernie. Right? So, why are they having such a hard time beating a president that they say nobody likes and nobody wants?
Well, part of it, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think so many people, he calls it TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. And I think there is some truth to that in the party, that whatever he does, it tends to get a reaction that may be overblown. It sort of throws Democrats off. So I think when you see, when everyone raised their hand and said that they would support health insurance for undocumented immigrants, that wasn't necessarily the best thing to do when you're trying to win voters in the middle.
But so are they real on what they're saying, or they're just trying to see what voters want? At some point you have to be authentic.
Right.
And you have to believe something, and I think that's what young people like about Bernie Sanders is the fact that whether they agree or disagree with him, he's there,
and
right?
He's been consistent.
And he's been
He's
consistent.
been that person
and,
for decades.
And if you look at the
I
Republican,
trust Bernie Sanders. I don't like his ideas, but I think he's a good person, and I think that's what part of the draw. He's not the standard politician.
and the same thing with President Trump.
Right.
You might not like him, but he says this is what I'm going to do, and that's what he does it. So I'm just trying to figure out at some point there has to be a Democratic candidate that would step up and be authentic and say what they believe and not what polls are telling them to do.
Right, and I think it starts with being able to give at least some credit where it's due. I mean, we know that Barack Obama did help stabilize the economy and sort of set it up for success, but Donald Trump hasn't messed it up. I mean, the economy has continued to grow. I don't think the party can be afraid to give him credit when he's done something good just because we don't like him because of the tweets or the rhetoric and some of his policies that are damaging to low-income people and those who are not as well off. But you have to be able to admit when he's done something right. I mean, even foreign policy or the trade deals, I mean, some of that stuff that he's talking about bringing factories back to America, I mean, how can you really argue against that? Labor unions supported the new NAFTA deal or the USMCA.
Yeah, the China deal. Yeah,
the China deal. So, but it seems like it's hard for Democrats to say that, to admit that he's done something right, and and I think he's good about sort of making people crazy with the stuff that he says. I think that's part of his strategy too, to sort of make people so upset on the other side that it is hard for them to get around that. I mean, you see on Twitter how people react to him.
Well, a perfect example was the State of the Union speech.
Yeah.
Now you got you have a State of the Union speech. He says all this good stuff. Now, they fact checked and said that, half of the stuff he said wasn't true, but but if you took away the hatred for Donald Trump and you just listened, a lot of good stuff. Now, whether it made sense, whether it was right, whether he really believed it, we don't. There's a lot of questions about that. But when you honor a lot of people in what you did, when you talk about health care, pre-existing condition, even though he's fighting the pre-existing conditions in the court, but I think that's what people are kind of talking about. But I just don't see why President Trump continues. Even though people say, I hate you, and he goes, I hate you too. So, I hate you hate me, we hate everybody. Everyone just hates everyone. And I think people are tired of that. Because what people want to know is what has worked for me and my family over the last 3 years. And what are you going to do over the next 3 years to make my life better, right? I don't think people are watching this, the Russians are getting us, right? And killing the Russians didn't get us. I'm just saying, I just want to say that it's just what I hear. This is what people are telling me. You got an impeachment in the House, and the president should have been impeached, but they knew the Senate wasn't going to impeach him, and then the Senate didn't impeach him, so we spent all this time. And the real question I want to know, and the real question our listeners are asking us is, if Donald Trump is so bad, why has his approval rating went up by 10 points, now 49%?
Well, he's unique because he really hasn't consistently passed 50. If you look at aggregation of his ratings, I mean, he's been consistently in the low 40s. It did go up a little bit. I think there was one that came out that showed it like 44, 45.
Well, he was at 49, and he was at 39. He's at 49. So through all the impeachment, through all that stuff taken, he's rose by 10 points, right?
Yeah.
Impeachment.
So he rose by 10 points.
Right.
And so, why do you think that is?
Well, I think the pop from the acquittal probably helped him, and I think that some of the, I think the economic numbers that have come out that have continued to be strong have helped him too. And I also think maybe the Iran affair, he took out Soleimani, and Iran they did a retaliation, but it wasn't really a real
they backed
thing.
down.
They backed down.
He said, I'm going to get you. He said, if you touch one of us, I'm going to come get you. And they touched one of us, and he went, and he got the number 2 guy, right? Now, whether you think he should have went and got him, should he talk to Congress, should he told him, or whatever, I don't know. I know most Americans, they care about their pocketbook, and they care about being safe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have a good pocketbook, then you can affect some of the economic, things that plague certain communities, minority communities, right?
Right.
If you don't have any economics, then you're not going to change
Yeah,
the
you
social,
can't change
right?
anything.
All right. At the same time, they want to be safe. They want to know that we want to be safe. I can get on my bus, I can drive, I can save America. Safe America's still going to be a power, right?
Yeah.
And those two things, it seems to be, that's what people are talking about. But when it comes to President Trump, I mean, people just really hate this guy. I mean, and they don't hate him. I mean, they hate him for a reason.
The left does.
Well, I mean, no, it's you still have some independents, and you still have a lot of some conservatives that are embarrassed about the things that he does, right?
He's not your traditional politician.
Well,
sure.
I don't think we'll ever have another traditional president. I don't think we'll ever see one. I think people like some of the untraditional things that Donald Trump's done, but they hate some of the races and sexes and how he goes about carrying them. And people say, well, he just says it. He doesn't know if he believes it, but he says it. It comes across, people feel it, and he hasn't figured out a way to change that. And I don't know if the Republican Party, want to change that, because it seems to be working out, they think, well for them, because the economy's still growing, jobs are still, unemployment is still low, we're passing wonderful things, but the fact that moderate Democrats, independents, and Republicans are embarrassed by this president is still alarming. And I think that's why the 49% is there. It's the highest he's ever had, right?
I believe it is.
It is. Well, I tell you what, we'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about the strategy moving forward. We're going to talk about the Democratic candidates, and then we're going to talk about how and what the thought process is on President Trump changing up and becoming someone that people think he should be. We'll be right back right after these messages. All right, and we're back, and we're talking to some of the brightest young minds in this political atmosphere. We have Kevin Chavous, who is the former president of the D.C. Young Democrats, and we have Robert Centers, who is currently the president of the Young Republicans. Is that correct? And we're back, and we're talking about this campaign. I know no one's paying attention to the campaign. Wrong. Everyone's paying attention to the campaign, right? And what they're paying attention to is on this Iowa caucus was such a, I mean, let me tell you, I worked the Clinton Gore campaign. I was in Florida for the recount. It was, I was down there, and they said, oh, we won, and then woke up and didn't win. It was terrible. And this seems to be, why can't the Democratic Party get themselves together?
Yeah, I don't know. Iowa's had problems, and they've had problems, Democrats and Republicans. I think when Huckabee won in 2012.
Oh, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But right now, we're going to focus on the Democratic Party and how they just really, created. Here you have the first primary. All the focus is on it. Everyone's, is it going to be Pete? Is it going to be Bernie? Who is it going to be? And we still don't know.
Yeah, we still don't know.
Right? It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. They tried to make it more transparent by having 3 separate counts or 3 separate numbers that they would release, and it didn't seem to work. I just think they really take pride in being first, that first in the nation role, and I think they overthink it sometimes, honestly. And I just don't know if the caucus format is really the most fair. It starts at 8 p.m.
So do you believe that the caucus format should be changed?
I do, because it leaves people out of the process. I mean, you have to be there at 8 p.m. Sometimes it goes late into the evening, early morning. Whereas a traditional primary, the polls are open, 7 a.m., 8 p.m. You've got all day. You can come vote when you can make it, and then go back to work or handle business. But just the caucus system, to me, is not. It's sort of outdated now. It's sort of reminiscent of the people in cigar-filled rooms talking about it and saying,
right.
Come to this side, come to that side. I just think
I think
it's
it could have been
outdated.
more orchestrated than we know. I mean, you see the way the fallout is that no candidate got a bump. And if anything, Buttigieg should have gotten a bump. Sanders should have gotten a bump. Buttigieg and Biden are tied for second in New Hampshire. So imagine the momentum that Mayor Pete could have been able to capitalize upon that he's not able to moving into New Hampshire. I think there could have been some nefarious play. I truly do. But at the end of the day,
we heard that. I mean, I think
shut down.
That's what happened.
To test that app. I know the Department of Homeland Security reached out and offered to test the app.
Yeah, but hold on.
DNC
But the
didn't
DNC,
allow it.
no, but the DNC came on and they said that they never had any conversation with the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, I mean, that's one side.
Yeah, he
versus
said,
the
she
other.
said.
I mean,
so
I don't know. I'm
He
just
said, she said,
that's
but
but
it highlights the election security that we need to do. I mean, people talk about hacking, Russian interference. That's been a threat for 50 years, as I said earlier. And one of the things that Congress is not taking serious is election security. I know Rodney Davis, the ranking member of the House Administration Committee, offered an amazing election security bill, the SHIELD Act, that was just struck down on party lines. And basically what it would have done is offer DHS cybersecurity funding and support to state election offices. And I think one of the great things we have in our country right now is elections that are so diverse and overseen by counties, by states, and they're so different that there's no way to hack one election and hack it all. The Democrats' plan right now is to centralize elections into the Department of Homeland Security and basically make it one database that would be more vulnerable to hacking. So I think if we want to have this conversation on the Iowa caucus, it should be seen through something of an election security perspective, because that, I think, is a true threat.
now I mean, you guys had the Republican Party had the same issue a couple of years ago, didn't they?
With in 2012 we did.
He didn't know he won until it was too late.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's still a little salty on that. I would be salty.
probably,
I would
yeah.
be salty on that. Let's talk about the candidates that's coming up. I mean, Michael Bloomberg seems to be the candidate that has strategically outsmarted the entire Democratic slate of candidates that's up there right there. He stayed away from all of the debates. He hasn't been involved in anything. He's put millions of dollars. Did you see his ads everywhere, right? And and he seems to say, "Hey, man, look how bad they are. Here I come to save the day." I mean, what are young folks thinking about Michael Bloomberg and his candidacy?
Well, I think he's still generally unknown to a lot of the nation because like you said, we haven't seen him. He's avoided a lot of the debates, but
Well,
I
no,
think
he's
these
spending a lot of
ads,
money
yeah,
on
the
ads. I mean,
are helping, and that is a good way to get your name out there because you're controlling the message. Very positive, makes him look like he's in charge, and
I mean,
Mayor of New
he's
York,
talking
if he
about the
was.
environment. He's
Yeah.
talking about education. He's talking about the economy. He's talking about the health care.
Yeah.
He's talking about I can beat Donald Trump.
right,
At
his own game,
his own game, and I can fund my own campaign. Are young Democrats ready to see two billionaires running for the presidency of the United States?
Well, I hope that if he gets the nomination, that they can put whatever feelings they have aside and get behind him, because we got to support the nominee. But I think that a lot of them probably aren't ready yet because they love Bernie. Bernie's base is young progressives, young Democrats, and he still. I mean, he looks like he won Iowa, I guess, or they tied him and Mayor Pete. So at this point, the last thing a Bernie Sanders supporter wants to do is probably to talk about supporting Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, but I mean, the question is, have the young folks been put off by what took place in Iowa? Because some say that
I think so.
It's a way to stop Bernie Sanders. Everyone's against Bernie Sanders. Like, it's the Stop Bernie Sanders movement. It used to be the Stop Joe Biden movement, right? It was like, ooh, stop Joe, stop Joe. Now it's like, let's stop Bernie, let's stop Bernie. And, we knew what happened last time. People were put off by that, right?
I think they are put off, and I think that's part of the genius of Bloomberg's strategy to avoid the Iowa and the New Hampshire and Nevada sort of primaries and caucuses. I mean, why should those matter as much anyway? They're not as diverse. They don't have that many delegates. Super Tuesday is really when it starts. So maybe he's ahead of the curve in thinking that way, and waiting for the field to kind of get culled down a bit, because there are going to have to be some people that drop out. You would think at least after we finished New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina.
Well, it should have been Iowa. Someone should have dropped out, obviously.
Well, a lot of people dropped out before. I mean,
That's true.
So as it relates to as we move down south, I was looking at the impeachment of President Trump, and we had only Republican that voted for impeachment against his own party's nominee, and he based it on God.
Yeah.
Right. But what are young folks saying about that? Something that's historic. It hasn't happened before ever.
It's mixed. I mean, it is historical, but Governor Romney or Senator Romney has always been his own man, and I'm not going to go out and say anything negatively on him. I think in his heart of hearts he felt the way he felt, but I think it will be more harmful to the party, to the Republican Party, to ostracize him, because I think something that I've always appreciated about the Republican Party is that it is very a grassroots organization, and there's room for a number of voices, and I think blind loyalty is not always strong for the party. And so while I'm not in support of Senator Romney's vote, I'm not going to badmouth the guy for doing something that he truly felt in his convictions.
That he should do. Question what I hear, and one came in, it was a question that the caller wanted us to ask, and it had something to do with the Republican Party. Why hasn't the Republican Party attracted African Americans? Have they written off the African American community?
No, I don't think they've written off the African American community at all. In fact, I think conservative policies, true economic conservative policies, are more helpful and build wealth, especially to the African American community. And you can see what this administration is actually doing. Secretary Carson unleashing opportunity zones that will affect 35 million African Americans have already started. Baltimore, for example, $100 billion of wealth is being injected into creating better schools, better roads, better infrastructures in disadvantaged communities. And I think it's that policy aspect that you have to look at. But really, the DNC has had a hold on the African American vote since and before, Lyndon Johnson. And we know from history that was not a tried and true, heartfelt effort. He saw the building of housing projects, of creating the welfare system as a way to captivate that audience for generations to come. He said it in a more colorful way that I will not repeat, but it worked.
But I mean, I guess the question still becomes, why has the Republican Party seemed to just say, not even, outside of one or two people, you sprinkle something here or there and say, I tried. There doesn't seem to be really any concerted effort to really go after the African American community and get the African American, because since I keep hearing from Republicans, African Americans are conservative, the values are the same, but I don't see any coalition with them really being open to be accepted in terms of African Americans as a part of the Republicans. I mean that's what when you want something, you go out, you go after it, you go get it, right? Because you believe that it's going to enhance your product, right? And I don't see that.
Accepting is the wrong term, though. I mean, the Republican Party is accepting to anyone. I know in my organization, our members, our executive board, are people of color. So, I mean, I can't really go with that argument. But I will say that, it's as simple as sitting down with someone and having a conversation of why our policies are better. And I think it goes back to the fact that the Democrats have had a control and an iron fist on the African American community for now 2 generations.
Yeah, but I mean,
and that's hard to break.
Well, that's true. But when you want a wall, you go out and you do everything to get the wall. You build the wall because you believe in the wall. You think the wall is the right thing to do, and you fight for it. And that's what you get when you want to, stop, increase immigration reform. You go after it. You do what you want. You make it happen. When you want to give tax breaks to the rich, you just figure it out. You do it. You go after it. You make it happen. When you want to actually attract, African Americans and other minorities and Latinos and Asians to the party, it's hey, we'll figure that out later. We're open. We love you. Come on, come all. But it doesn't seem that way. Same time with the Democratic
support is building within the African American community. I've seen some polls recently that suggest
do you think
into the double digits.
Do you think he's going to get?
That's what his polls are saying.
I mean,
but I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that Donald Trump will get move up 1 point in the African community in this election?
Oh yeah, for sure.
2 points. You think he'll get 2
More.
points? So if he gets 2 points,
Did he get 8 last time? 8%?
I don't know, but
he's
7, 8%.
he said he'd get to double digits. If he gets to a double digits African American community, that's a problem.
Yeah, that is
I don't
a
know how the
problem.
Democrats are going to win.
That's a problem.
So I mean, why do the Democrats who agree with some of President Trump's policies or some of President Trump's successes, why does the African community blaze them for even coming out and saying anything? We just talked about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some things are good, we just don't talk about it because we want to be the hate. Why is that?
Well, African American, the block of votes that are sort of the black vote is very strong. I mean, probably more than any other race racial group, we vote, when we break one way or the other, we break that way. 90% of the vote went to Hillary Clinton, or 92 or so. That's a lot. I mean, the Latino community, the Asian community, even the white community, it doesn't break down like that. And we also, a lot of us, we vote for who grandmother tells us to vote for or grandfather tells us to vote for. And Donald Trump's biggest problem is with African American women. Women in general, but definitely with black women. They do not like Donald Trump, which makes sense.
It's kind of hard to vote against someone your mama like.
Right,
I'm just saying, it's just
when they drag
your mama look at you and be like, hey, I know your mom, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
My
mom likes Bernie, so I'm not
going to But I do think that's part of it. But also, we remember some of the stuff he did before running. The housing discrimination, Central Park 5, the birtherism movement against Barack Obama. Yeah. So it's hard, when you have a memory or a long memory, it's hard to just ignore some of that stuff just because the unemployment rate has continued to fall since he's been president. I mean, it was already dropping with Obama. It's continued to fall. I don't think he deserves a parade for that. The net worth for blacks has actually gone down in the last decade. Home ownership rates are down. So just because more jobs have been injected into the market, is it really changing lives? Are black people better off now than they were, 30, 40 years ago? In the long term, are we set up for long-term success? And really, we're not. You talk about opportunity zones, but that, you have to have capital gains before you can even qualify. That's just putting gentrification really on like a fast track. There's not many people that are from these communities that are benefiting from the opportunity zones, at least not right now. So I think, it's hard to just overlook some of the stuff we've seen him do in the past. And just some of the rhetoric, going after the congresswomen of color and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly, the president.
Was that racially based, or was it because they're literally the loudest opponents of Trump in Congress? I think the way we tend to be, and we're such a sensitive society in 2020 now. Hopefully, not as bad as 2019. I think we're getting better. But it's things like that. Was that racist?
Well, if it's viewed against,
it was just if I call somebody a name and they happen to be somebody of a different identity, does that make me against that identity or against that person? I think society has a hard time making that distinction.
So is your point the fact that Donald Trump just whoever says anything about it, he just hates whoever doesn't like him. So is that what you think?
I truly think Trump does not have the time in his day to hate people. I just think he's the master of being able to get under people's skin, and that's something that Democrats have not figured out since Donald Trump has been on the scene since 1975.
No,
people haven't figured him out.
Robert, come on now, Robert.
Yeah.
Well, he just dislikes people. Like, if in fact you disagree with him, you're the enemy, and everyone says that. It's none of this. I'm getting underneath your skin.
He stands around stewing on Pelosi.
Well, some people say he does. He watches TV, he gets upset,
and he tweets.
Breaking records and tweeting.
That was a good one, though. I appreciate you trying. That was a good try. But I want to
in the past. And just some of the rhetoric, going after the congresswomen of color and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly, the president.
Was that racially based, or was it because they're literally the loudest opponents of Trump in Congress? I think the way we tend to be, and we're such a sensitive society in 2020 now. Hopefully, not as bad as 2019. I think we're getting better. But it's things like that. Was that racist?
Well, if it's viewed against,
it was just if I call somebody a name and they happen to be somebody of a different identity, does that make me against that identity or against that person? I think society has a hard time making that distinction.
So is your point the fact that Donald Trump just whoever says anything about it, he just hates whoever doesn't like him. Is that what you think?
I truly think Trump does not have the time in his day to hate people. I just think he's the master of being able to get under people's skin, and that's something that Democrats have not figured out since Donald Trump has been on the scene since 1975. People haven't figured him out.
Robert, come on now, Robert.
Yeah.
Well, he just dislikes people. Like, if in fact you disagree with him, you're the enemy, and everyone says that. It's none of this. I'm getting underneath your skin.
I don't think he stands around
I mean,
stewing on Pelosi.
Well, some
every
people
day.
say he does. He watches TV, he gets upset,
and he tweets.
breaking records of tweeting.
That was a good one, though. I appreciate you trying.
Hey.
That was a good try. But I want to get back to this.
Yeah.
Michael Bloomberg and a President Trump matchup. I think President Trump's nervous about that matchup. That's the one I think is going to be nervous. I think him and Bernie, he's nervous about that one. He's starting to call, Michael Bloomberg all these names. You know how he gets when he feels like someone's right close to him.
It was Joe Biden at first. I think
Oh
he
yeah,
was nervous about.
It's been everyone, right? It's crazy Bernie, but I think now he's like,
I don't
look.
think he's worried about Biden that much.
No, not
First off,
anymore, I don't
Biden,
think.
Let's go back
me,
to
doesn't
Bloomberg.
even
Let's
wanna
go.
be
I want to go back to Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A President Trump Bloomberg general election is something that I think the polls have Bloomberg beating them. All those conservative values. I mean, what's your thoughts on
Conservative
that?
values from Bloomberg?
Yeah, he used to be a Republican.
Banning my soda does not seem to be
soda
conservative
tax.
to me. I mean, that's me. I'm the anti-tax on the soda guy. I'm out of Bloomberg. I don't think he's that worried about it. I think his biggest threat would come from a young, fresh face. Honestly, like Mayor Pete. The problem is, Mayor Pete's like at 0% among African American voters. I mean, I don't think he has any support.
But I mean,
and that's how you win the South.
So you think
That's how
you
win
think
the
Pete?
urban center.
That's a big
So
problem.
you think Pete? You think Pete? I mean, you've mentioned Pete a couple times. So you think?
I think he's
is Pete
the future of the Democratic Party, at least to attract the independents. Sanders, a younger Sanders, would do well, but we don't have one. I mean, the only one I can think of is like an AOC, and I think the likability factor is
Yeah,
zero.
but hold up. We got Trump, and Trump wasn't young, but
Yeah.
he was different.
Yeah.
Right, but he wasn't young,
He's
so he was like, "Oh, we got to
shaking
find the
things
next
up,
young thing."
shaking
Well,
things up.
we woke up and Trump's now the president of the United States, not a young thing. It's 70 years old. So I'm not sure. Just saying, we need to find anyone young, and if they're halfway decent,
We gotta make
they
a
could be the next
contrast, I think.
face of the
I
party.
think you got to give people a contrast. If you give Bloomberg, it's two old white billionaires from New York. I mean, how similar can you be? I mean, you're choosing between Brie and Gouda at this point. You're not choosing anything drastically wild.
But it goes back to the point of, you mentioned Kevin when they asked him what's the number one objective. What did they say?
Right, to beat Donald Trump.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then when you are moderate, when you are a independent, and you are a Republican, right, that doesn't like what they see in how Trump acts, but likes the policies that Trump present, I don't know. I don't
maybe
know.
they
I'm just
see
going to say right
Bloomberg
now,
as
they may
someone
see
who
Bloomberg
can continue that,
who can continue that.
who wouldn't change the good things. I
And
guess.
can Bloomberg, garner the minority
win
community
delegates?
cuties?
I think
Can
is
he
the
win
important
delegates?
thing at
Right.
this point.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people. I mean,
He seems to not have that lesson down.
well, you say that, but he's spending a lot of time in California. He has gotten a lot of mayors in urban areas
Yeah.
that came out and have endorsed him. I mean, they've endorsed him already. The mayor of the District of Columbia, Muriel Bowser, came out. She's endorsed him. They had the mayor, I think, of some place in California. I think San Diego or San Francisco.
In Stockton,
in
another
Stockton.
small city.
Yeah. But I mean, but what I'm saying is that he is now spending the resources and the money to gather enough support, right, without being without being on stage, without anyone shooting at him.
Yeah.
And I just think that, now you heard it right here, it's always real talk. I believe that, I think the president is scared of Michael Bloomberg. Not going to say scared, because I don't think Donald Trump's scared of anyone. But I do think he will cause him some sleepless nights with him in the race. So I'm going to give you some closing comments. What is your prediction on the Democratic primary?
Well, overall, I think
Super Tuesday. I'll keep it easy
Super
for you.
Tuesday.
I saw you.
Yeah, I was like, man.
He's like, that's a big question. I'll keep it
we
Super
flip
Tuesday.
a coin or something off camera.
Super Tuesday. Give me New Hampshire and Super Tuesday.
Yes. Super Tuesday, I think you can't rule out Bernie Sanders because of the momentum. But I think that, he's been running now since 2016, still didn't blow us away in Iowa. I don't know if it will translate. I don't know if he's really sort of hit that wave outside of New England or
Well, if in fact, if Warren and Sanders have the same base,
Right. So
and if in fact
the
one was out
longer
there, if
they're
we went
both
out and won a
in,
race,
yeah.
Bernie would have
Both
50
in,
something.
he's hurt.
That would have been 50% of the vote because most people who voted for Warren would have voted for Sanders. If Warren wasn't
Yeah.
in the race, he would have had 50%. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. It would have been a blowout. He would have been on in New Hampshire,
Well,
right? I mean,
that's
that's so. How long Warren stays in the race, we'll figure that out. But that's the real question,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
And I think Bloomberg though is a dark horse because the polling numbers have shown him going up. With the ad blitz, and he's putting more money into his ads, starting to ramp up the events, the fundraisers, having DJs. I heard he has some event with like celebrity DJ.
But
he's starting to ramp
no,
up.
but you think about it. People say he's spending money, right? That's
Yeah, but is that what you want?
Well, no.
But that's what it takes.
But let's
you
back
gotta
up.
spend the
People
money.
say that he's spending money, and it's easy to say that because he is spending money. But at the second time, you just sat here, and we just all just sat here and said the number one thing is to what?
Defeat Donald Trump.
Okay, so we just sat here and we said that right now it looks like a circus,
Yeah.
right? Okay, and then they see this guy that's not a circus. Looks like he's not a circus, right? Because he's not in the mix.
Right. He's been on the outside.
And you want to know why his numbers are going up
Strategically,
because he's strategic.
staying
He's
out of the way.
outsmarted everyone in the race. Now, will that hold up? It's a different story. But right now, he has strategically outsmarted the Democratic Party by doing what he's doing. His numbers are going up. They think he's spending money and paying for DJs. No, Democrats want Trump out. And they don't care who it is. They want Trump out.
Yeah.
And when they look around and see who's not the circus, he seems to be the guy that's not the circus and the guy that can go toe-to-toe and has the resources to do it.
Right.
But
Right.
can he have the delegates to back that up if he's not competing in these primary states?
Yet to be seen yet.
Yeah.
But we'll
Yeah,
find,
Super
we'll
Tuesday is
we'll-
when it starts.
Super Tuesday. That's why I went back to my
Especially
Super
with
Tuesday
health-
question.
Yeah.
Super Tuesday is coming up. I think that Mayor Pete's going to do a great job in New Hampshire, but when it gets to South Carolina, you're from South Carolina. So you tell me, do you
He's
think?
not
you
gonna-
think
he's
I mean-
not gonna-
okay,
no,
so you're going to go
no.
there. So when you take that sweep through there, the question is,
The
who?
bus stops in South Carolina and it probably will, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, Robert, no one got a bump really from Iowa because it was like a tie. I think they only ended up with like 10 or 11 delegates each, which isn't a
Yeah.
lot. Even someone like Joe Biden
He
is
got
not
11,
done.
Bernie got 11,
You know.
and then
Yeah.
Warren got
And Warren got a couple. So I mean, I think the race begins on Super Tuesday.
Yeah,
Right.
I think so too.
And I think that's where you're going to see people drop off, and then that's where you're going to see, the president of the United States start to, tweet more, and whoever looks like they're, going to be ahead.
I'd love to see a brokered convention, though. That would be my wildest dream come true.
Oh, broken convention.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it is a possibility with all
It
the,
would be. It would be. Especially if they're stay above that 15% threshold
You know-
in
Yeah.
a lot of these states.
Robert, you've been laughing a lot, but every candidate on there that's been polled beats Trump. Every single last one of them. He doesn't beat anyone.
in the head-to-head polls.
Head-to-head polls. He doesn't beat anyone. He doesn't beat anyone. I mean, is that something
But I
that you
think
think you're
like
concerned about?
92% of polls, I think, said Hillary was going to win last time around. I think it comes down to the science. It's the targeting key states, flipping former Democratic states back. New Mexico's on the map. Virginia's even on the map this cycle. There are key states where there is a targeted effort to make
Do you think Trump can win? You think the Republicans can win Virginia? Okay, it took too long.
Wrong numbers.
Took too long. Let's go to New Mexico.
I'm
Let's
over
go.
50%.
Took too long.
50%.
New Mexico.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Okay.
It's a Bush state, Obama state, could be a Trump state.
Ohio.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Pennsylvania.
For sure. I was in Pennsylvania
Florida.
in 2016.
Florida.
Florida, yeah.
You think the Democrats can win Virginia?
Yes, I think Democrats will probably win Virginia, just because Northern Virginia is so blue now.
Thanks,
it seems
Jeff
like.
Bezos.
Okay, let's go to Ohio.
Ohio, I think we can.
Oh, you're pausing.
That's
Yeah,
where
no,
I don't know about Ohio.
We're pausing. Pennsylvania.
I think Pennsylvania, we could win Pennsylvania.
Florida.
Florida's probably tough.
Oh, you're pausing
Yeah,
and pausing again.
we can,
You're pausing
but-
again. New Mexico.
Florida's always close. New Mexico, yes, I
Okay.
think Democrats.
So here we go. You paused on Virginia,
Yeah.
right? You paused on Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Well, Ohio and Florida, really.
And Florida.
Pennsylvania,
Okay. Ohio, Florida, right? Now, if you don't win Ohio and Florida, you don't win the election. You don't win the White House.
Right.
Right, unless you go and flip some other states.
Yeah, you'd have to
I don't-
flip all the other
right, and
Michigan
and let's
Pennsylvania.
go back to you mentioned Virginia is important.
Virginia's very important.
right?
Yeah.
You paused on Virginia.
The reason is because look at what's happening. The Democrats have
If you don't,
have all chambers of government, but the key thing that I'm looking at is the raw vote totals because some districts have changed. So you have, essentially gerrymandering on the Democratic side happening. But if you look at the state legislative elections in 2019, more Republicans turned out. More people voted Republican. We lost seats, but more Republicans turned out. And I think especially with what's happening with, say, the gun special session going down there, it's energizing these Republican voters that stay home on election day. And I think there's nothing energizing the Democrat voters in Virginia right now.
well, I tell you what, as we move forward, I want to thank both of you for coming in. It's always Real Talk. We're here. We like to have this. We'll definitely have you guys back. After New Hampshire, we'll come back. We'll talk about New Hampshire, and then we'll, come back after Super Tuesday.
All right,
Great.
that sounds
Well, if it's always Real Talk, it's going to be real.